Our gospel lesson, which is also our sermon text, is from John chapter 18, verses 28 through 40. Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jewish leaders replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jewish leaders again and told them, "I find no case against him, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" They shouted in reply, "No, not this man, but Barabbas." Now Barabbas was a bandit. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What is truth? When I ask this question of my 6- and 7-year-old, I'm usually asking a question about what happened, who hit whom, who said what. Please tell me the truth and don't make up a story. And all of a sudden I hear my own mother's words coming out of my mouth. Now, the deeper question is, what does it mean for my wife and I to teach our children what is true? When false tweets and questionable Facebook posts outnumber the more accurate ones, how can any of us model the careful and deliberate telling of truth? That's part of the question. But I'm not simply thinking about the accurate reporting of facts. I'm thinking about what it means to teach our children about something that is real and true in the deepest sense. What is truth? What is the most real and true thing that you can say? And this isn't just a question for parents. It's a question for the entire faith community. How do we teach the youngest among us about what is true and real? The late country music legend Johnny Cash wrestled with this question of faith, a question of truth. And how do we pass on truth to the next generation or talk about truth with the next generation? In his song that was titled "What is Truth," which was recorded in 1970 on the Man in Black album, it was a protest song, and it rose to number 3 on the country charts. And in the second stanza, a little boy of 3 sitting on the floor looks up and says, "Daddy, what is war?" "Son, that's when people fight and die." The little boy of 3 says, "Daddy, why?" A young man of 17 in Sunday school being taught the golden rule, and by the time another year has gone around, it may be his turn to lay his life down. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking, what is truth? A young man sitting on the witness stand, the man with a book says, "Raise your hand. Repeat after me, I solemnly swear." The man looked down at his long hair. And although the young man solemnly swore, nobody seems to hear anymore. And it didn't really matter if the truth was there. It was the cut of his clothes and the length of his hair. And the lonely voice of youth cries, "What is truth?" That last stanza reminds me a bit of the trial scene with Jesus and Pilate. Pilate asks Jesus, "What is truth?" But did you notice that he doesn't even wait for the answer? He simply asks, "What is truth?" And then he turns away to go back to the Jewish leaders who had wanted to have Jesus arrested. Now, the careful reader of the Gospel of John picks up on the irony right away. In John chapter 14, Jesus had told the disciples, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And so when Pilate asked the question, "What is truth?" Well, the truth is standing right in front of him. The way, the truth, and the life is right there. Now, what does it mean when Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me"? And through the centuries, Christians have struggled to tell the truth about that statement. For some Christians, and for many Christians, it means that only those who are Christian will be saved and go to heaven. But for many mainline Protestants like me, we notice that Jesus didn't say Christianity was the way, the truth, and the life. Presbyterianism is the way, the truth, and the life. Fundamentalist Baptist religion is the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus said that he was. He is the way, the truth, and the life. To me, that makes it sound like Jesus is in charge of the guest list, not us. The late theologian Shirley Guthrie once asked, "Who is this Jesus? Who is the way and the truth?" This Jesus is the one who seemed to accept everyone, particularly those regarded as unacceptable by religion. He is one who reached across all the barriers of culture and race and religion and invited all of us to sit down together at the banquet table. And I'm also reminded of what Jesus says in John chapter 12, verse 32. "And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." And that word is just not just all people, it's really cosmic. Jesus draws all things to himself, renewing all of creation, drawing everyone to himself. And to me, what it means to embrace Jesus as the truth is to embrace that hospitality and that self-giving love that Jesus embodied. This is a self-giving love that loves God with everything we have and also loves our neighbors as ourselves and doesn't for a moment think that someone isn't our neighbor, because each person is our neighbor. Now, maybe we've just replaced that abstract word truth with another abstract noun called love. And to help flesh it out, a friend of mine reminded me of a quote from Mary Oliver's poem, "In Blackwater Woods." "To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go." This is the deepest sense of truth that I know. This is the life, death, and resurrection pattern that Jesus embodied: to love what is mortal with everything in us and hold it against our bones, knowing our own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. I'm thinking some more about that young man of 17 in Johnny Cash's song. It's one thing to lay down one's life in a war that has been fueled by imperialistic goals and sustained through propaganda. And it's quite another, as the Gospel of John points out, to lay down one's life for a friend. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. That's John 15, verse 13. And when it comes to teaching the truth to our children, how do we teach them that self-giving love is the highest form of love? How do we teach them that it's important to do the right thing simply because it is right, even if doing the right thing leads not to rewards, not to accolades, but perhaps even to suffering? There's a scene from the Batman movie, The Dark Knight, that might be construed as a parable about what it means to embrace self-giving love, even for strangers, and even at the risk of your own life. Towards the end of the movie, the Joker, hauntingly played by the late Heath Ledger, shuts off the power to 2 ferry boats filled with people who are fleeing the city, effectively trapping them on the open water. On one of the ferries, a group of Gotham City's most upstanding and affluent citizens. On the other, a group of prison inmates. The Joker hijacks the intercom and announces that both ships have been rigged with explosives, enough to blow you all sky high, he says. Tonight, you're all going to be part of a social experiment. The Joker reveals that each group has been given the detonator to the other boat's ship. Anyone attempts to get off your boat, you all die. Each of you has a remote to blow up the other boat. At midnight, I blow all of you up. If, however, one of you presses the button, I'll let that boat live. So who's it going to be? Gotham City's most wanted scumbags, in the Joker's words, or the sweet and innocent civilians? You choose. Oh, and you might want to decide quickly, he says, because the people on the other boat might not be quite so noble. It isn't too long before the civilians on the first boat start feeling a little twitchy. One of the onboard military personnel asks everyone to stay back. Well, now, who are you to decide? Asked one wealthy man on the boat. We ought to talk this over at least. We shouldn't all have to die, another woman chimes in. Those men had their chance. We are not going to talk about this, the soldier says. Why aren't we talking about it? Because they're talking about the exact same thing on the other boat. Now, just before total panic and chaos takes over, one person says, let's put it to a vote. The civilians are asked to write down their vote on a piece of paper and place them in a hat to be tallied up. After several minutes, the final tally is 140 against detonation, 396 for. As the captain stands holding the detonator, a passenger says, so go ahead, do it. The captain looks up at the clock on the wall. We're still here. That means they haven't killed each other yet. The man who spoke first looks up at the clock, only minutes left. No one wants to get their hands dirty. Fine, he says, I'll do it. Those men on that boat, they made their choices. They chose to murder and steal. It doesn't make any sense for us all to die as well. He takes the detonator. Meanwhile, back on the other ship, one of the convicts approaches the captain. You don't want to die, he says, eyeing the detonator, but you don't know how to take a life. Give it to me. You can tell them I took it by force. Give it to me and I'll do what you should have did 10 minutes ago. Painfully, the captain hands it to him, and without a moment's hesitation, the convict tosses it out the window and into the water. He then joins the other inmates who are praying together. Now, back in his hideout, the Joker watches the 2 ships as the moment of truth arrives. And here we go, he says. The affluent man places his fingers on the detonator, and he looks down at the device at his own hands, and we see the look of contempt starting to crack and is replaced with deep sadness. He slowly places the detonator back inside the box and joins the other civilians filled with shame. At midnight, both of the ferries are still alive. Furious, the Joker grabs his own detonator to blow up both of the ships. That is, until Batman intervenes and shows up to save the day. Now the people on the boats wrestled for truth. And at the end of the day, before the clock struck 12, they found it. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. May we seek the way, the truth, and the life. All glory and praise be to our God. Amen.